These Creditors in Commerce workshop sessions, hereinafter sessions, are the private exchange of ideas and concepts between the providers and the recipients. The content is not meant as legal advice. The use or attempted use of any idea or procedure discussed in these sessions, as applied to the recipient's own personal transactions, cases, or controversies, or applied to other cases, may or may not result in a favorable outcome or the same outcome as discussed in these sessions. Each transition or transaction, case, or controversy may be different as a result of unique actions or unique statements made by the parties therein, and each different act or statement in any transaction affects or may affect whether any procedure or idea discussed in these sessions is relevant to the recipient's transactions or that the outcome thereof will be depicted as in these sessions. The discussion of ideas or procedures in these sessions is not exhaustive of the subjects being discussed. Many ideas and concepts that can affect the outcome of any legal or commercial procedure are not discussed in these sessions, and the fact that recipients may not be aware of these issues may have an adverse effect on the outcome of the recipient's procedures. It is the responsibility of the recipients to understand their own transactions and to apply the appropriate and complete concepts necessary for a procedural and substantive remedy thereto. These sessions may be redistributed privately by any recipient to another recipient requesting them, condition upon the fact that this notice is provided therewith. If you have any questions, you may contact Creditors in Commerce by email at harmony@creditorsincommerce.com.
We were talking a little bit about some neat things in contract law and some of that, and I've heard some comments from some of you. And it's kind of a neat thing. This thing called contract law, and you've got to get your mind around it. It's all contracts, ladies and gentlemen. It's all contracts. Almost every single step of your life is going to be the fulfillment of contracts. So let's get that straight. And contract, who makes the contract? You do. Yickwo versus Hopkins. Sovereignty itself is, of course, not subject to law, contract, because it is the author and source of law, contract. You are the law. I love the legislature. I love Congress. And it's important that you get out cooperative federalism. It's an easy document. It's layman language. It will tell you. Congress has two species of power. One is just complete or plenary power over District of Columbia, and the other, they make some laws regarding the several union states, and they're few and far between. And I appreciate the Patriot II Act. It just doesn't apply to me. I went into the major retailer. They wanted a Social Security number. Take a look at banking without Social Security. We have that article for all of you. It's so insightful. People cannot compel you to disclose the Social Security number. Not your number, the public trust number. Read the back of a Social Security card. It tells you it's not your card. And if you find it, turn it back in. Why do you think when you go to retail stores and they take a credit card, whose card is it? It's not your card, so don't worry about it. This is all contracts, ladies and gentlemen. And one of the things I want to try and keep you upbeat on, you have rights no matter what, where Homeland Security pulls you up, a police officer pulls you up, but understand the contracts you've entered into. You have obligations, and therefore, remember, we told you there's two major premises that the public is concerned with when they're dealing with contracts. One is that it's the assent policy, voluntary, consensual assent to an agreement. And number two is that they can rely on your acts and actions and conduct for their reliance on that there's a contract. When you're being pulled up by, and I want to go to a little further, we're also talking about, I'm going to touch on just a subject that there are some groups out there that are going to do things for you people by taking your money. We're going to do this, we're going to do that. I'm talking to a particular person about a group that makes it sound like mortgages are going to be easy to deal with? Would you file some paperwork and they're going to go away? You saw the process that Brandon talked about regarding mortgages yesterday in a non-judicial state. And you saw 3 areas. Set off and its whole process that goes around it. Perfection of title and its process that go around that. And control of possession. And those were each. And he told all of you, this is not for amateurs. I know you're busy, and I'm going to tell you, I was so grateful to Almighty God for my 8 years, 10 months in prison. Yes, I know that you all are out here having to struggle with families and living and doing things. And it precludes your ability to really devote the kind of time that Jack, Brandon, and I are allowed, thank Almighty God, to devote to learning and these processes. I know it's hard on you all. I know it's difficult. But if you will persist, you will prevail. You have lots of time in the car. You can find, take a look at how many hours are there in a week. What is 7 times 24? $168 hours in a week. If you slept 8 hours every night, 7 times 8 is 56. That leaves how many? 112 hours, give or take. You work 40 hours a week. What's that leave you now? About 72? What are you doing with 72 hours? Time for another whole full-time job and 32 hours. Yes, there's getting ready for work. There's showering, putting on your
72
makeup.
hours, you can watch the entire Living Temple series, 1 through 24, in 72 hours.
I know it sounds oversimplistic, but it really is just that way. When you get up in the morning, do your little bit of reading or put on your tapes while you're waking up, putting on makeup, getting ready, combing your hair, shaving, what have you. It will sink in when you drive in the car just 15, 20, 30 minutes to wherever you're going, lunch breaks, coming home, at least an hour a day. It isn't going to take, all of a sudden, at a half-hour drive in the morning and a half-hour back, not filling your head full of that crap radio. No offense. But to me, TV and radio are very vexatious. Got a lot of neat stuff on them. However, is it worth all the garbage that gets heaped on you? I compare it to like life is like a giant mud hole. In this concept, can you walk through a mud hole without it getting on you? That's the only concept in a good sense. We all walk through an area that's going to get on you in your life. You merely choose the kind of mud. Your friends, what gets inputted into this computer via radio, TV, newspaper, etc. I rarely need to read the newspaper. I hardly ever have the radio. And I only really like to go to movies because Jack has such great stories about them. Because it now is coming into my sphere. I'm just hungry for knowledge because I don't like being constrained in the sense that somebody's running my life. And like Theodore Roosevelt said, we either govern ourselves or it'll be done for us. I agree with that wholly. And I'm not telling you to run out and challenge everybody and do this and do that. What I'm telling you, start making moves to move your life in a correct direction. The point I was making, some of people, and we're hearing some of my students are paying organizations that make it sound like they're going to provide paperwork the day before a trial, the day of the trial, and give them something to say and embarrass the government, and it's going to go away. That is ludicrous. I can't believe some of my students are buying that, and we'll see. Maybe I'll be proved wrong. Don't count on it. There are laws that govern the universe, cause and effect. The strength of the effort is the measure of the result. Just like James Allen says, in all human affairs, there are efforts and there are results. The strength of the effort is the measure of the result. Chance is not. Gifts, powers, material, intellectual, and spiritual possessions are the fruits of effort. They are thoughts completed, objectives accomplished, visions realized.
How many people here believe in magical phrases and magical paperwork? Meaning, I can utter a phrase and make, like he was just describing, a court case go away. Don't think that that's a magical phrase.
You need a bigger word, abracadabra.
Yeah, there you go. Abracadabra, swing your wand around.
We're thinking seriously about everybody that comes to one of our seminars. We're going to start manufacturing magic decoder rings. That we think is going to be the answer.
What we have going is there's some groups out there that might have you think certain things. You saw what, and that sounded rational, what Brandon said about a mortgage. If you understand contract law, you've got to set it off. You've got to deal with the title, and you've got to deal with possession. And that is very unique, and you can hear it, and he says it's not for amateurs. You won't be an amateur long, don't worry. You can come up to speed quickly. But I'm encouraging you merely to reconsider when somebody tells you something that is too easy. Now, also, you got to temper it with, of course, some of the stuff we talk about sounds absolutely far-fetched. How can you go in a courtroom, say that I'm here as the authorized representative, and the judge not throw you in jail? You're going to have to come back and get an educational level that's steeped with a little bit of reality. You can go into cooperative federalism and see case after case. There's another case, very famous case. The government of the United States, as was well established in the argument, is one of limited powers. And it goes on. It can exercise authority over no subjects except those which have been delegated to it. Congress cannot, by legislation, enlarge the federal jurisdiction, nor can it be enlarged under the treaty-making power. These are landmark cases. Seminal cases. This is irrefutable, dispositive, that which cannot be challenged. Nothing has changed. It requires your consent to be bound by any law. That doesn't give you the right to go do whatever you want, because as soon as you trespass on somebody, you're now potentially breaching the peace, breaking some law. If you're driving a vehicle or a conveyance down the highway that has a state plate on it and a police officer pulls you over, don't be all shook up. It's not your vehicle. So don't take that as where's your right to deny me the right to travel? There's ways to deal with it, but also be prepared for some fun. Fun meaning if you think fun's getting hauled in or something, it won't take them long in your small town to get to know who you are. But are you going to have to go through some little bit of trials and tribulations? Count on it. Do you think when I was in prison I didn't have to periodically go to the hole teaching some new staff, or when I get transferred someplace, something unique? And it was never discomforting. And you're going to find all sorts of stuff. I'll tell you it's a short one and keep it short. Going through when I went being checked into what was termed Graham County Jail at the time, after they asked me to sit down and wait till everybody's checked in, I've got 6 officers in front of me. And they say, okay, what's this about? And I says, well, do you have a bona fide claim to hold me? We have a contract with Safford. That's the federal prison I was in. I said, am I a party to that contract? This guy was pretty good. He goes, you an attorney? Offer and counteroffer. Offer, counteroffer. I says, no, not a good question to respond to that way, but, you know, I was just beginning. That was my first. Do I
need to be an attorney to ask questions?
So, you know, at that time I didn't understand these this was back in 2004 when I just got going in this stuff. I've been studying for a couple of years, and I said, well, party time, let's see what I can do. Pretty soon it denigrated down into, if you don't get your, I'll use butt, don't get your effing butt over against that wall, we're going to force you and taser you. And I says, are you and very calmly, are you threatening me? Not a smart aleck way either. He says, no. And pretty soon they were like, look, come on, man, we got to put you in the cell, man. And I was really lost. I didn't know what to say. So like a good debtor, I got up and walked back to his cell with him.
Don't you have better accommodations?
No, I didn't. And I tell you what, now when I left that place 2 months later with some unique fun in between, it was very interesting because they says, Hall, roll up, and a sheriff takes me out, and there's 2 federal guards that I saw from the compound who knew me, I knew them. And this sheriff just left me in this area of the sheriff's station with these 2 guys sitting across the wall, and he leaves and walks away. And so I'm just standing here. I look at them, look at the clock. They're not saying a word, and I'm not saying a word. I didn't realize they need something that causes them to get jurisdiction over me. They had given up jurisdiction. Brandon even proved that when the forestry may have arrested Brandon. He showed him ID, but when he went to Kern County, jurisdiction was broken. They can't just turn him over. So I hadn't realized at that time. So I stood there for probably all of 5 or 6 or 7 minutes without a word, which seemed like forever. And then pretty soon I said, what are y'all waiting on? They said, we're waiting on a phone call. 10 seconds later, he got up, went out someplace, made like he followed me, come back. He said, okay, let's go. And I tried to, recoup, and it wasn't until later that I realized my mistake. Another time in going through transferring with the BOP.
Now, wait. What was his mistake? He accosted them.
Accost means to speak to first without being spoken to, or greet without being greeted. Because I have a friend that I taught some of this language. He was outside of an Orange County. We want to teach you to talk a little. Standing outside of a drug rehab building in Orange County, about 30 guys. They're obviously all felons from the drug house building. A police car pulls up with 2 officers in it. And the officer on the passenger side says, you, come here. And my friend says, now he's going to try this, and he says, why are you accosting me? And the officer says, I told you to get over here. My friend says, may I see some identification? Offer, counteroffer, offer, counteroffer. The officer responds, this car and this uniform is identification enough, just an offer. And my friend says the classic one, are you refusing to identify yourself? You'll hear that with every one of them. Are you refusing to do what I told you? Just an offer. And the officer looked at a different one and says, you come here. And that guy got up, went over against the car, patted him down, asked him some questions, sent him back to the herd. What did 28 guys see? Because my friend went into the drug halfway building, and when he got inside, he asked, the counselor says, what's all that about? He explains it, and the counselor says, you got a lot of balls. And pretty soon, when the police got done with that guy, they walked into the building. Now, you know that those 29 guys are going, oh, man, he's in trouble, right? And by the time the story gets back or another hour goes by, they went in and shot him and drew and quartered him, or something. So the officers come in. They say to the counselor, who's that? Counselor says, do you have reason to believe he committed a crime? No, then I'm not at liberty to give you any information. Next time a police officer, you're walking along the sidewalk and hey, you come here. Why are you accosting me? I told you to come here. We can do it the easy way or the hard way. Are you threatening me? May I see some identification? And the game is on. Now, remember, I told you contracting is acts and signs. So I'm going through Oklahoma one time, and this is what you're going to, so we'll come back to that in a moment. I'm going through Oklahoma transfer station one time. I'm in the line. It's time for me to come up to the camera, and the guard's sitting over there in the thing, and the camera's over here, and we're all lined up here. And so guard says, get your ass up there. And I says, I won't be availing myself of your services today. Wrong thing, but I mean, that's something we try. That's why I was just starting out. He says, I told you. And of course, everybody's kind of like, stepping back, because we got something going on here. So he says, get your... And I says, by what authority? And he gets louder and I says, are you threatening me? And he gets up on the desk. I'm threatening you. I says, by what authority? Now I'm just standing here real still, etc. And he comes out from behind that desk, comes roaring up in my face, and I'm holding still, saying, oh man, I'm going to get cracked. But if I go like this to block, isn't that a sign to fight? I'm in big trouble. He knows I'm just going to, he knows I'm not going to swing at him. You got to be a nut to be swinging at a guard. Hitting him doesn't feel as good as doing 5 more years in prison is going to feel, right? So don't touch those guards. Don't even think about it. They're good public servants. So he comes right up in my face and says, could you please step over here, sir? Like from Hyde to Jekyll in a nanosecond. And I said, why, sure. I have never found them less than doing their job. If you put your hands up I just put my hands up, that's a sign to fight, remember?
Let me break in for just 1 second, because there's an important lesson here. Who is the creditor in the contract? The requestor. Very important. The guard was demanding, the guard was not equal to equal. He was using authoritative position to Gordon until when Gordon totally was neutral and the guard came up, he went, would you please go up there? Did he not change from aggressor and demandor to requestor? Because he was given courtesy to the other party. The guard just became a creditor. What did Gordon do to respond? Out of honor, he fulfilled the obligation, so he was a counter-requestor. And they're at an arm's length, because going up to the bark was just the thing, the tool. It was neither good nor was it bad.
Just like Brandon says, it's an event. So, neutral event. Long and the short, I step in, he locks me in a little cell right there, and for 15 hours they can't get me in the building. Because I didn't give authority till like next morning after like every 40 minutes they got somebody in my face, and I'm having a lot of fun. And it's going to get interesting. I don't know what would have happened after 2.5 days of it. I think it would have really been really interesting to see if they could have held me. Because it was
I want to share because you just brought up that the creditor is the requestor. The noun, request, you know what it means? The act of as king. The act of asking.
Remember, when you break down asking, as and king, as is defined in the capacity of. So asking is in the capacity of king. That's the way we view it.
In Scripture, doesn't it say the 3 actions? Ask, and it'll be given unto you. Seek, and ye shall find.
Knock, and it'll be open.
Knock, and it'll be open. Those are your 3 creditor positions. And they're all actions. They're not passive.
If you don't ask, they can't say yes. It's so cool. It's all contracting, and I'm giving you some examples to understand. It's like what Brandon told you. You've got that circle. Here's a neutral event. That officer's up in your face. You're fully expecting, and I talk to a lot of people, they will beat you down. I always say, are you sure? The major retailer gal. Well, that's the law. I says, are you sure? We got thousands of attorneys. They can't be wrong. Are you sure? Well, yeah, I am. Uh-oh. What am I sure of? I'm sure I don't know much. That's what I'm very, very sure of. And I'm excited to learn more all the time. But if we can get you to understand that you are, in fact, the kings and queens on the land, you do make law, and the importance of stuff like cooperative federalism, some of this other stuff, is for you to see that, in fact, think about it. Does it make sense that the president, and I happen to like Obama, they're entitled to have anybody run that corporation they want? It's none of my business. And do you think I worry about what laws they pass? They don't affect me. They got so many laws on the books they could do away with you. Who cares if they pass some more? They just pass more and you talk about them so you go along with these others. And pretty soon, we know how you boil a frog, little at a time. You know, the society that we live in today is unimaginable 30, 40 years ago. They just, no way you're going to have where you can't. What do you mean you're going to arrest and write people a ticket for watching a drag race? I'm on the sidewalk, you're going to write me a ticket? What? That's only in Russia. Remember, we used to watch the old movies on TV. They'd pull those cars over on the side, your papers. And the guys that have all these papers, we used to laugh at it. You get pulled over now, you better have the license, registration, insurance, your papers. You're there. But it's okay. We want those officers doing that job. Now, if you have your conveyance and you have your private plate on it, not a state plate, not an issued DOT plate, your plate, and you've done the proper stuff to get it there, do you think they're going to be stopping that vehicle? Not likely, and certainly not. And I've got some students, one that's he just threw one on his plate, had it 3 years before he got hassled. Another one in Texas, a real great experience with his, and they still had their darn vehicles with the VIN numbers with the state. They didn't even do it right. And they still got away with it for a long time. But if you do it right, it's not getting away with anything. Do you believe that that David should be allowed to do whatever he wants with his car? If he wants to eat McDonald's and leave papers in it, and he wants to lend it to people and never wash it, it's his car. It's his right to do what he wants with it. And you should respect that. You have no right to be yelling at him about his trashed out car if that's what he did with it. You have no right to do that. You don't own him that right. So you could see that you should respect another's right. If I don't want to comb my hair in the morning, you shouldn't. And you might say, well, I don't know about the dude, but if he don't want to comb his hair, it's his choice. If I want to wear a white shirt with blue jeans with holes in them, it's okay, right? Okay. This government that has its citizens, and those that think they are its citizens when they're not, they're welcome to it. Can't help it. Ignorance and freedom can't coexist. If you don't know that you're not a U.S. citizen, that your country's New Jersey, New York, Alabama, Georgia, California, if you don't know that.
And that's if you choose your allegiance to be with that nation of California, Georgia, or any other nation. See, I stand in a different place. I'm not a citizen of any political subdivision of this earth.
Now, if he has the federal government stepping all over his rights, who's he going to go to? He's going to go to California because they're there to put checks and balances on the feds, and they will. That's a fact. Their authority is as strong today as it was in the beginning. They have a corporate side, yes, but you can rest assured. You think the feds want us to have gun control? That's right. Then why did Arizona just pass anybody can carry a concealed weapon? Feds don't think selling marijuana on any basis is okay, including medical marijuana. But California says we got people that can sell medical marijuana. Do you think prostitution is legal? Not in the Fed system it isn't. Feds arrest people all the time for all sorts of stuff. But in Nevada, they're not arresting people for prostitution there. We got houses, cat houses. We're doing it. What are you going to do about it? Well, they're licensed. And they're not doing anything about it. The states have all of, they gave nothing to the federal government. They delegated stuff, but they did not grant a single power. That means they can take anything away they want from the feds. The feds was put there for their convenience and safety, and it needed to be. Who would have taken care of characters like Al Capone, who controlled Illinois via Chicago? You own the governor and the police and stuff, you really got your own problem. What a beautiful bicameral system. What a perfect system. Be upbeat, be optimistic, love this government because they're the best. They are whole and complete, and they can't do anything to you without your permission. And if they do something to you, if somebody wants to take your little chess set and want to pay you $40,000 for it, beautiful. If some big giant retailer would like to not cash a check because they feel they can compel the disclosure of the Social Security number, fine. My buddy at 65 went down to get a renewed license, and they weren't going to do it without giving a Social Security number. Want to bet? How did they violate the law and everything they quoted him and initial that he didn't have to give it? All he had to do was assert his rights. He said, I'd be happy to accept the fact you're going to come out as soon as you get somebody to sign that you refuse to give me this. Are you refusing? There was that word. He said, as long as they'll put that they're refusing to give me a license on here and sign it. They were gone for 20 minutes, come back, and they crossed off that section initially. How did some bureaucrat there able to do such a thing on a license application? I thought it was the law. We tell you, it's their job to tell you stories. Because the minute you start believing and trusting them, you're out of your mind. We can count on them to do that for us. What a blessing. Will you stop trying to put square pegs in round holes? They're going to lie. What did that gal that was talking to Julio? You're supposed to be here at 10 this morning for the summons. Are you telling me I can't resolve the matter privately? You're just supposed to be here. Didn't even threaten him, but even if she did, is she authorized to threaten him? Well, when the warden said, I'm going to seek civil or criminal penalties if you don't remove the lien, if she would have told him some threat and he knew what to do from there, guess what? That gal might not be working there anymore. You always have a remedy. You are the king and the queen, and you better be humble about it. And if you do, rest assured, just because you don't know how to do this stuff, don't worry about it.
And if
you didn't get into this quagmire in like 2 minutes, and you're not going to get out in 2 weeks. So it's going to take you a little bit of time to start learning who you are, how to assert your rights, how not to get walked on. And then one of the things I want to encourage you, if you think getting relief of $100,000, $200,000, $500,000, $1 million mortgage debt is going to be just file a couple of pieces of paper by somebody or somebody's going to handle it for you so simply. My contention is if they really had it down pat, I wouldn't be charging you $2,500 to do it for you. I'm going to be getting 10 or 20 grand all day long down. If you don't want to pay it, I don't care. Well, I don't have the money. I don't care. I'm going to have plenty of people once you prove you can do it. So if they really could prove they could do it, and they have had success with some of these people, and we've had lots of bad experiences, but when you start getting with people, and I'm not going to name the organizations, but I'm seeing several of my students paying some of these organizations, especially in these criminal matters, that we can set off your deal. Don't worry. Here's a magic decoder ring, and we'll you just hold on to that, and the day before, the day of it, we're going to call you and give you some paperwork and tell you what to say. I said, that's the most beautiful scam, Jack, I ever heard. Because you see, I said, Jack, we could do that. We will give them the paperwork they need to file, and all they got to do is go in and do what we told them to say, right? How many of you could even come into this mock court and do what we told you to say? These guys got them. I know you can't say it if you didn't have any exposure. And they're going to tell, they're not training these people. They're not helping these people. Don't worry about it. We'll take care of it. We have this network that's interconnected, and whoever started this, we can make it go away for you. Right. You're going to believe that? I'm going to see. I got 3 students, and their party is soon to begin. And they are walking away from obvious successes on their part, miracles, to take something that is easier. And I'll tell you, this isn't easy. I've told you that. I get a lot of students, and I say, look, you need to be on a mentorship program with me where you're training all month long. I said, if you want to call me and spend an hour, 2 hours on the phone at $200 an hour, me or Brandon, we're happy to do it for you, but it ain't going to help you much. I can tell you what to do. I can even give you some free advice. It's not enough. You need to invest some time and money in your education. You obviously are. You're here. So you do care enough about it. And I know some of you can't afford it. I tell you, get 3 of you together. And one of you do it, and the other listen in on the phone conversation every time you tape it, and you can give it to your friends, then you spread the cost. I do a lot of that. Jack doesn't do that. Brandon doesn't. He does what he does. I do what I do. Jack does what he does. Jack and I work on a lot of deals together. But the long and the short is, nothing is easy. For you that are, this deal that he showed you about mortgages, I'm going to encourage you. He said it wasn't for beginners, and we're all beginners kind of, but we can learn how to do it, and once we've got it, then we're going to be great at it. And, of course, if you spent money with Brandon to learn how to do it correctly and join his 7-month deal, because I think many of us are going to, I'm not going to be there, I'm going to be there. Absolutely. because he's going to teach these things very clearly and succinctly. Well, I don't want to be going 7 months, because he knows it's got to be slower, ingrain it in him, that kind of thing. And then what happens? What is it worth for a living? Some of you doing nothing, some of you doing something. All of you could go out and teach us. So are we going to have to compete with you? Not at all. Do you realize the staggering amount of problems that exist out there? About everybody's got them or knows somebody with them. And this is not easy. It's as simple. One of the guys said, it was his brother. He said, you just keep saying the same thing over again. Very good. That's all. It is that simple. It's the same thing over again, over and over. You are the king or the queen, and you conduct yourself as a creditor. You ask questions that bring harmony. Because what's the purpose of law? To bring harmony. That's all it is. Be upbeat. You will get through it. It's just new. If I tried to learn knitting, and a lot of guys in jail learn knitting, and they do, and they sell the stuff, and it's really cool. Some of those guys are like, man, they just, I'm looking at it going, whoa. I said, I love to be able to do that, but I don't want to take the time to learn to knit or sit there and do it, because I want to focus on what I'm doing. They like to do it because their mind just gets lost in doing it, and it's cool. And you're looking for a hustle all the time. But just like me trying to learn to knit or fly a jet or anything else is initially difficult, or do your professions, our profession of law or whatever, it isn't going to take you long once you apply yourself to it also. You really won't. And yeah, it's Greek and difficult, but be upbeat, because the world is yours. And these people, this de facto government has no authority over you. Well, how can they just arrest you? Well, they can't with impunity unless you've granted jurisdiction. And we've talked about it. We've talked about how to conduct. And you'll get it where you can get it. Brandon was sitting here, and we've given you the little tricks. And more of these courses where we just sit there and we said like 5-10 minutes of stuff. And Brandon didn't even want to try and remember and rebut everyone was praying. I conditionally accept everything you said. Let the record show that I never made a claim. He says, let the record show. Neither the judge nor anyone else here has a claim against the defendant or the defendant's property. Therefore, this concludes my business. Have a nice day. And when I got done with my thing, the toothpick question, do you understand me? He didn't understand what I said. He just said, let the record show. Nobody's got a claim against the defendant. That was the last offer on the table. That's what the record shows. That was so beautiful. I could harangue for 10, 20 minutes like the judge did to our friend Dwight, and then said, do you understand me? And Dwight says, I can't even remember every said, I can't do it. But he'd forgotten I conditionally accept all that. Jack does it too. We do all these things, and when I test with Jack, we have all these question and answers for different clients going into a thing. And Jack is this part, and I'm the judge that time, or it gets turned around, and I say, and I go on and harangue for 5 minutes. He goes, I just accept all that on proof of claim, and then says his thing. It's so beautiful.
Let me break in for a second, because you were on that role acting that we were playing last night with Brandon, okay? And a young lady came up to me afterward and said, explain to me again why it was you said to the judge, let's just arrest him and then hold him, and we'll bring him back later. Why didn't you do that? Remember when the judge was kind of in this sidebar up here, remember what Gordon kept saying? She said, you're in trouble, Mr. Prosecutor. He's got a claim. You don't know what's going on here, but take it from me, we've got to get rid of him. Remember in our role-playing process how Brandon's character had already stated he had a record into chambers with the judge. Remember that? Okay. What did that record show? Set off settlement closure, right? Who do you arrest in the court? Do you arrest a debtor or a creditor? Debtor, okay? As the prosecutor, was I aware of that record or the contents? Now remember, the defendant, i.e. the authorized representative, had mentioned that there was a record in chambers. But did I have knowledge of the contents of that record? Not as a prosecutor. Did the judge have notice of that content? And the judge saw that he took care of the claim. Even though he wasn't the defendant, he took care of the claim. Because remember, after all they're looking for is getting the money and or testing you. So the judge knew that the claim was settled. What did that make Brandon or even the defendant? Creditor. But I'm saying, hey, he's way too real. We got to look like we're punishing him. We got to get him out of here. He's not going to leave until he settles this thing. Let's just arrest his ass, hold him, and then we'll bring him back later in private. And what did the judge kept saying? You don't understand. He's got a
Prosecutor
claim.
really believes that he can have him arrested because he doesn't know the full
I
game
don't
either.
see it. You see the way we were role-playing last night, and you see the way the judge, didn't you say to me at one time, I'm protecting you? I think you did.
Yeah, because one of the times, I'm going to tell you, I had a guy up on a double murder. This was wild. And I'm in prison, and a buddy of mine, associate of mine there, came to me and says, hey, Hall, I got a problem, I think. I said, what's the problem, Dominic? He says, I just got called back to the unit manager's office, and they read me my rights over the phone. I said, well, what's it about? He said, well, it's about a double murder. It's a pregnant gal that was a dope pusher. And I said, well, what's that got to do with you? He'd been in prison for about 5 years for dope. He's a doper. That's one of his pusher girls. She was murdered. His green car, his girl. Now, he's getting ready to get out of prison. He's like 90 days to the door. You hate being called R&D? I told you that. Ain't no fun when it ain't your time. Because these things, he's going to get ready to get another case. They just read him his rights. Because there's 3 guys that have been in jail back east for 5 years pending this, waiting for him to get done with his Fed sentence. And then they're going to drag him in there and charge him with the murder. Well, these 3 guys said, Dominic did it. We were there. It's Dominic's pusher girl, Dominic's car. We were there, we don't want to go to, give us the needle, the electric chair or whatever. Our defense is Dominic did it. So Dominic comes and tells me this story. He says, I think I got a big problem. I said, I think you do. He says, can you help me? I said, well, we could try you and see if we can get you to learn to say a few things. So him and I spent some time together for about a week before they came and got him. And 2 officers drove all the way 26 hours from back east to pick him up and drive him back 26 hours to this place. Why would they drive instead of fly? Government's jobs keep people busy. What are you going to do with all these people sitting around? We got to keep people busy.
What's he going to say for 26 hours in a vehicle, too?
There you go. See, lots of good things. But anyway, he gets there and he shows up in court. I won't use his last name. But pretty soon he shows up in court. And now I can't for the life of me figure out how Dominic managed to remember what I told him. Because it was only like 4 one-hour lessons or something, So he comes into court, he's standing there, and the clerk says, Dominic Smith, raise your right hand, blah, 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 swear in. He says, who's Dominic Smith? Now he's standing there, so it's obvious they're talking to him. He knows that name pretty good. And the judge says, she butts in and says, Dominic Smith is the person who is supposed to be appearing before me. He says, why do you keep referring to me as Dominic Smith? The judge goes, are you not Dominic Smith? He goes, I'm the agent for Dominic Smith. She goes like this with her glasses, which he says is a Mason sign for I see you. The defense attorney, he jumps up. Remember, he's Dominic Smith. We can take him down, fingerprint him, picture. He's Dominic Smith. And judge's counsel approached the bench and, sir, she didn't say Mr. Sir, could you please step out of the courtroom? He steps out of the courtroom with the bailiff, comes back a minute later, and she says, will you swear in to testify? He goes, why would I testify? She goes, are you refusing to testify? He goes, are you assuming I'm refusing to testify? She goes, no. He goes, I will affirm. I know these words because I taught it in my classes at the compound because he eventually made it back. This was so cool. He takes the stand. You don't swear in. You affirm everything I say will be true. My yes is yes, my no is no. That's all you're getting out of me. And no to reason, everybody will accept your affirmation. James 5:12, but above all things, my brethren, swear not, neither by heaven, neither by earth, neither by any other oath. Why? I swear I'm Gordon Hall. Boy, God knew you'd lie. He told you not to swear. Why? Because you don't know who you are. So, Dominic affirms. He's sitting there. The defense counsel gets up and he asks 4 questions, to which Dominic answered no to. 4 simple questions, and sits down. You can imagine the 3 defendants looking at their attorney. What are you doing, man? He killed her. Ask some questions. Get this guy. The judge says to the prosecutor, any questions? He goes, nope. You're free to go, sir. And he was gone. 2 weeks later, he shows back up at the compound. I say, Dominic, you're back. He says, yeah. I said, what happened? And he told me the story. Are they all going to be that easy? Absolutely not. Judge will figure get him on another round. They got 3 guys. That's good enough. That serves public policy. The needs of the many outweigh. We had 3 bodies. We don't need 4 bodies. This one will be back anyway. Interestingly, after that, you want to learn some more? He says, nah, basketball game's on, man. I said, man, you're going to be doing probation. You get it? Nah, I don't want to learn anymore. And I said, it's so unique. This guy just saw a miracle. A big miracle in his life, and yet he didn't want to learn anymore. I always said, that wasn't for him, it was for me and my group to build our testimony. God bless us. I said, how could he even remember to ask that stuff? But he knew the basics. Ask a question. And they weren't even right questions, were they? Are you assuming, parroting, that's kind of like arguing. But it was okay. He didn't get too recalcitrant. Remember, just 375,000 ways to do this thing. But as king, you are asking questions. Let's try and hopefully they're not like Judge says, are you Jack Smith? And he says, well, what's that got to do with my mom baking cookies last Wednesday? Which is a counteroffer. I conditionally accept to answer your question if you can prove that my mother was baking cookies last Wednesday, oatmeal ones. Believe it or not, that's a counteroffer, and I think Brandon could make it stick. Jack could make it stick, and I know it sounds funny, but I'm telling you, it's not off the mark. It would be far better if it was related to the situation, but you can do it. What I'm telling you is you can do it, and it's so magical. Just try it some. I mean, the stories are so endless of successes we've had with our students and with my own stuff. I'm one time on the compound, and they're endless. I ignore a guard because I'm coming out of the chow hall with a bunch of contraband in my socks. I'm loaded up and they're bulging out like this. I mean, it's not fine. And we've got 2 guards. They can't leave. You pushing the wheelchair. I'm not you. I just keep going. I say, Ronnie, don't turn, don't look, don't say a thing. And we're going all the way around. They're yelling, you pushing the wheelchair. Ain't talking to me. They're looking for you. So I'm going around. Pretty soon they're on the walkie-talkie phoning this other guard. Now you got to understand guards. They're not going to run across the compound unless it's an alert. They're not going to run. So we got this guard trying to cut me off. I'm going the sidewalk way away from the chow hall. I got 100 yards to go. And this guard's going, you pushing the wheelchair. And I'm walking by people, and they're going, hey, the guard wants you. I say, shut up. I say, Ronnie, don't turn, don't look, keep your eyes straight forward. This is an old gangster. So I said, don't do anything, Ronnie. So we get to the dorm door, and I can't get in. It's locked. So this guard gets there, and he goes, didn't you hear me? I said, why would I hear you? You got to understand what I'm thinking. Why would I listen to you? Are you telling me you didn't hear me? I says, why would I hear you? He says, listen to me. This is simple, yes or no. Did you or did you not hear me? And I just look at him real intent. I don't understand your question. Is there something wrong with you? Did you or did you not hear me? I said, why would I hear you? They want you over at the chow hall. I said, well, why didn't you say so? So I pushed Ronnie back to chow. Now, the two guards, one went over and covered this guy's station. He's walking back. So there's one guard, he's patting someone down coming out. So I go on in, and as soon as I get in, I'm unloading my stuff, you know. And then they come in and say, you come here. I says, yes, how can I help you? Now, Ronnie's just holding a little paper napkin in his hand. And these guards, they start in. Didn't you hear us? I says, why would I hear you? Listen to me, man. It's yes or no. It was like they'd gone to the same school. And we went through all this again. And then pretty soon they said, we just wanted to know what he had in his hand. I said, well, why didn't you say so? And Ronnie just opens his hand and there's a napkin. It's so empowering, like Brandon told you. It's so beautiful that when you go through customs or the restaurant person or the hotel when you're checking in or the supermarket gal, it's so empowering, it's so enlightening to see that you can control the conversation and just how, I hate to say it, how easy it is to manipulate. That's a bad term, but how easy it is to stay in honor.
Actually, it's not a bad term. If you look up the definition of manipulate, people, it has multiple definitions. But one of the definitions is to skillfully, or with great skill to maneuver, with great skill to operate, to skillfully operate. So it's not necessarily an underhanded thing. But that's very much what we're doing in commerce as contractors, controlling contract as creditors. We're skillfully operating our contracts.
Look at what Gordon has been telling you. In every one of his communications, wasn't the guard being a requestor? Hey, you stop. Hey, you whatever. Why wasn't Gordon treating him like the creditor at that time? Because the requestor was not coming with honor on an equal by equal. The requestor was coming as the supreme authority against someone else. To respond at that time to the request is to assume the role of what? You are my master, I am your slave. We got two worlds, below the line, above the line. Below the line, master and slave. Above the line, equal with honor.
They will treat you with honor. I got arrested in Joe Arpaio's jail in Phoenix, Arizona. He's the one that has the road gangs, etc. He's a great guy, great sheriff, by the way. I get arrested there. I don't give him any jurisdiction, no picture, no prints, that kind of thing. I'm locked in a cell. The next morning, I've got 4 gals outside the door, and they're outside the cage. I'm in this pod someplace, and they go, we need to take your fingerprints so we can release you. Oh, that sounded good. I says, why do you need to take my private property to discharge me? Counteroffer. Back and forth, back and forth. Pretty soon she turns to the 3 ladies. She says, he's pushing me. I'm not pushing him. And they leave. But they were very courteous. A couple hours later, the rapid response team shows up. Shields, guns, like you got big problems. Because if they show up, sometimes it's going to be a little bit animating. So you better be on your game. Wildest thing I ever saw, because I dealt with lots of rapid response teams. Because when you don't do what they want done, they got to bring this in. They have protocols, but it was never been inordinately rough with them. They're always, now you get rough with them, you defense, they will pound you. They will hurt you. But you have to have some serious faith that they're not going to do anything untoward towards you, unless they've got jurisdiction on you. So this big old sergeant, I'll leave his name out of it, we'll call him Sergeant Bo. He's got his crews, they got their pellet, their beanbag guns and their gear and all that, and they're all outstanding. And this guy opens the door. It's usually they're yelling, down, get down, before they come in, and you better do it or else you might find yourself in a thing. But I'm not doing anything they want done. I always counteroffer. He opens the door, walks right in. I'm laying on the bunk, and he walks right up to me and says, "Can I talk to you?" Boy, that was a shocker for me, because I've never seen such a thing out of guards.
As he goes on and he tells his story, watch the point I was trying to make. Doesn't Gordon always treat them with respect when their request is equal to equal in the Republic? When they do a request in the democracy, like, "We are your master, you are our slave," if you play the role, you have become what role you have played. So it's the fact that a requester is a creditor, but the jurisdiction, the territory of the contract is being determined by the conduct of the parties. You see the point I'm making here? And if Gordon wants his liberty and they cannot compel your liberty, the key thing here isn't the fact that they're acting as a requestor. The key fact is requestor from what jurisdiction? If you treat me with respect, I will be happy to respond to you. So Gordon assumes the jurisdiction of rights, and when he was in prison, did he have rights that other prisoners didn't have because of the jurisdiction of where he's coming in his contract? Tell the story. They understand now.
So this big old Sergeant Bo comes in and says, "Can I talk to you?" Why, of course. So I get up and he goes, "Sergeant Bo." And I go, "Gordon Hall."
Oh.
I shook his hand. Contract. And it's boded me well later. Just like God to give me what I needed. So I shake this guy's hand, introduce myself. And we sit down and we have this nice little, really pleasant conversation.
You understand, you strike your hand, you become a surety for the party whose hand you shook. You're taking on the role of, "I will perform whatever duty and service you give me."
What it is
That's
thus also.
not necessarily bad. That could be a full acceptance.
They're looking for Gordon Hall. I introduced, in the Standard International Bible Dictionary off the internet, it says that it's striking hands, shaking hands is a ceremony used technically as surety for another. Become surety for another. So, woo. Well, I should have said, "Well, I'll give you a quick one on that, and then you'll know what I did do." So the long and the short, things kind of didn't go bode well, and I got stuck for 90 days over some stuff, and it was all my fault. And when they escorted me out of there, that was their first witness on Gordon Hall. So they escort me out of there, and it was impressive because I got this SWAT team, this rapid response team, got 8 guards from there, and me and this Sergeant Bo are walking in front. We got our retinue behind us. It's impressive. Everybody, of course, everybody in the prison wondering, who the heck is that? Needs that kind of deal, And we get to just about where we go outside, and he says, I need, because he's saying, "You don't belong here, this and that," and I fully agree with him. I accept I don't belong here. And so just before we get out, he says, "Well, could you just step in this room for me?" And he's being really nice the whole time. "And just put these socks on. I don't want your feet hurt when we go outside." The reality is I wanted to be outside. I'm wearing boxers now because I won't put on the jumpsuit they give me. And I won't even put on the boxers. They had to put them on. When they took my clothes, I ain't putting none of their stuff on. And I don't care if you parade me through the prison naked. I ain't taking any benefit. I'm like, really? And I have walked through a few prisons naked, by the way. So, but hey, what a big deal. I'm not, and I go in the bunk and I'll sleep on the bunk and they'll pile up food and mattress. I ain't touching any of that stuff. And I can tell you, you don't have to go to that extreme, but I could see so easily, and this is what we'd given advice to Brandon, and when Brandon got his chance in Kern County, he walked away and settled 2 felony drug charges and misdemeanor charge. He's never heard from him again. It's off the books. It's so revelatory. It is so unique to see these successes, because Jack and I get to see them all the time. We also see many of our students get right up to success and walk away. But it isn't just Brandon or Gordon. I got so many students, and they're on my Monday night calls, that you can join and hear them talk about, man, I can't believe it. I walked out. This case got settled. This happened. That happened. We've got transcripts of court. We've got stuff to give you. This isn't maybe stuff. It's reality. So where did shaking hands in the future come in? And I screwed up by putting on the socks. There's their second witness. I took a benefit. They took me over to another jail and locked me up for the rest of the 90 days of the halfway house kind of a thing. Long and short, down the road, I'm over in San Diego trying to set off these supervised release cases. And I'm sitting, and they're trying to assign an attorney to Gordon Hall. So this has been going on. This is like third or fourth hearing. And I'm holding my mud, but I'm not doing a good job because I don't really know how to close this matter up. I just keep asking questions and doing stuff, but I can't close it because I don't know what I'm doing at that time.
No call to action.
No call to action. I'm just limp on that because I just didn't have it at the time. So, all Brandon's fault, because if he'd have told me sooner, I'd have been all right. Or if Jack would have told me. Jack was helping me. He wasn't getting it all done. So I got to say it wasn't my fault. You know, where were my friends when I needed them? So, not really.
I didn't want him out. He was just going to bug me on the phone.
And I do.
Yeah,
I bug him.
I was going to say, me and Jack got a little vacation from Gordon.
And it's true. That's how bad it is. They're not lying. And so I'm sitting outside a courtroom on the 5th floor one day. I've got a couple associates with me. And this great attorney, he's a judge in that area, and he's also head of a large firm down there on the top floor of the tallest building in San Diego. And I didn't know who he was at first because they didn't give me a schlock. And this guy comes around. I'm sitting on these couches, and we're down 3 doors from the end of the hallway in this reception area on the 5th floor in San Diego in the federal court building. And this guy comes up, and I'm sitting down, and he comes up and he goes, I won't use his name, John Smith. Now, he puts his hand out, but I had my lesson. So he's got his hand out, and I just look at him, and I get up, and out of the corner of my eye, I see a marshal peeking around the corner. He was waiting to see if I shook that guy's hand. That's what I believe. And when I stood up and started talking to him, I could see this guy over the guy's shoulder. And the guy turned and walked away. And I believe that, that was a wonderful experience about shaking hands and then looking it up. So we counsel our students, if you go in there, be really careful. Because this same attorney later on in the next hearing, he came, we had put in a letter saying we're going to do it on this basis, and you got to do this. He has to do this, this, and this. He come up to me and says, Gordon, how you doing? I'm sitting in the gallery waiting for court to start. He says, Gordon, how you doing? And I'm just looking up at him. I said, I'm good. I said, what have you decided? We're going to comply with the letter. It's agreed. That lost me. That tripped me.
Except
he agreed. He can't agree to that.
So he's lying.
Yeah, I should have known. It was so good.
Because words
he's really
will never
good.
hurt you.
He's doing his job. Well, how much they got to lie to us before we really believe that we must take control and stop believing in that they're going to help. They're going to help you because if you're a slave, they're helping you. You need to be lied to before you hurt yourself.
They really are helping you in substance.
Really are.
But in form, they're lying to you in the appearance. Oh, yeah, I'm here to help you again.
They're really good. I'm telling you, I love these guys. I can't say enough good about all those men and women, guards, wardens, attorneys, judges. That's for sure. To be able to internalize and know this stuff. Brandon will tell you that he was not your experience with Kern County the most wonderful experience you'd had to that date.
Absolutely. I mean, as far as
it took
realizing
out of
that
being,
I'm the authority and the
I may be a
sovereign.
sovereign to what?
It took me from understanding these things as concepts and principles to realizing I can live it. I am sovereign. I am the king on the land. I walked out of there like Superman. And watching everyone's face as I'm walking out of there, they're just like in complete disbelief, like, what the hell happened?
This little smart ass is getting out after all the stuff he did. And he was a smart ass, by the way.
I was. That's the one thing I would have changed. But it took me, by me being the smartass in that moment, it was a perfect learning experience for me because it took me to a place of testing my faith and resolve.
And being humble. You should hear his story on the LA deal. It's so nice. But I could give you 100 of them. That's how not rare they are. It's over and over again. You really are the kings and queens. And when you learn this thing called contract law and understand that it truly has validity and efficacy, effect, it's like he says, they're my drugs. Okay, 2 felony counts of drug possession. We got the drugs, we got the dude, we got the ID. And all those guards at Kern County are how's this dude walking out? This guy's sitting here not giving a picture, not giving this, saying these weird words and doing all this. He's walking out of here? You think that doesn't startle them? They're starting to see this more and more everywhere. You think these policemen and guards haven't ran into guys like me and Brandon or half of us or guys better or Rob Menards in Canada are not seeing this? They all have. They know what you're trying to do. That doesn't mean they believe in it. But you can bet their training has given them marching orders. You're going to get jurisdiction or you don't get to do what you want with them, not with impunity. And maybe that guard, like the guard over there at Terminal Island on the chess set, and the captain, the lieutenant, and the AW, and the warden, you can bet after I left there, and interestingly, now this is a federal pen in California. Julio, I'm working on a good neighbor of Julio's getting his son out of a jail in Illinois. Now, the father we've been talking to about this stuff, and the father says, I don't think that stuff's going to hold water one with the judge. But I love my boy, so I'm going to pay for a try. If a witch doctor came to me and told me he could do some chance and this and that, and I want this amount of money, he said, I'd pay it to get my son out if I even thought there might be. He says, so Gordon, make no mistake. If you were a witch doctor telling me, I'd still pay you what I'm paying you and Jack to get my boy out. So he's not believing in this at all. Would you get Julio a mic? Now, if you think what you do doesn't have ripples, Julio goes to visit this guy's son in jail here just like a week or two ago, and the father is with him, and now the father had heard my story about the chess set and the warden and listened to some of our stuff weeks before he engaged Jack and I in this matter. And Julio's going to tell you what happened at the thing and what the effect was on the father, because you don't know who your children are watching you, things are going on, and I'm going to tell you, it's interesting. Now I'm in a Fed prison there, and we're going now, fast forward to an Illinois state prison.
I'll start with this because it gives you a little background about how this even came about. The jail was actually on lockdown, and I went with Dad and his younger brother to go visit him in prison. And we didn't know that the prison was on lockdown, so they only allowed 2 visitors. So Dad sent me up with the younger brother. Now, younger brother, he doubted all of this. He told me I was nuts, told his dad in front of me that he thought he was wasting his time and his money not to listen to this. Just go ahead and deal with the appeal. Well, we get upstairs to visit him, and he comes out completely shocked. He's looking at me like, what are you doing here? So, well, I came to see you, to see how you're doing and to kind of give you some status about what's going on, because I had already talked to him that Gordon was going to start helping him out. But I didn't tell him who it was. I just told him that I had finally found someone that could really make this happen. So all of a sudden, the younger brother starts talking to him and tells him, listen, I started researching this myself. I started looking into this, and I finally decided to really give it some time, and I spent about 10 hours last night just researching. And I think this has some merit. I think Julio's right about what he's talking about finally. So the brother who's in prison, he actually got his paralegal certificate and has been studying law because of what I had been talking to him about. So the younger brother, he tells him a story about a guy who charged a police officer $10,000 to give him, because the officer was asking him for his ID. And he conditionally accepted upon $10,000 payment to surrender his ID. So all of a sudden, the brother who's in jail says, hey, you know what? I heard something like that. There's this rumor going around in the jail about some guy who got some kind of chess set, and he got like 40 grand for it. But this is a big deal throughout the prison. Everybody's talking about this guy. And something about the warden went to jail, and just a whole bunch of people got in trouble. I mean, this guy is he's like a hero in this place. So everybody's talking about. I died laughing. I almost fell out of my chair, and he's looking at me like, what the hell's wrong with you? So I said, listen, you're not going to believe this, but the guy who I have helping me to help you is that guy who did the chess set. He almost fell out of his chair.
You never can tell when it is. And what did the warden say? All those are false rumors and putting out stuff?
Actually, he tells me that they put out a newsletter in the jail to all the prisoners that was just a rumor and it's a false story. It never happened.
You better not go file anything.
You know, you can't tell when you're doing. I'm telling you, the future for us is so bright and so exciting, and it's not going to take you long to get this. And this Congress can pass everything they want to pass. It's got nothing to do with you in the republic. It's got everything to do with you that are in the democracy. So on that note, let's turn it over to Brandon. Be upbeat, be optimistic. We got a brother over here that's, once you start getting into this contract law stuff, a little UCC, how things are handled, and you learn how to control a conversation, I promise you, your personal relationship with your spouses, boyfriends, girlfriends, children, neighbors, everything is going to be better. Your business stuff, your respect and love for this government is going to just blossom, because we need a strong, powerful government. And they ought to pass a whole lot more laws. And just like I think Jack and Brandon and I were on our phones, and guys, aren't you worried about them bugging your phone? Not at all. Listen in on all my conversations. I'm not worried about them misusing my conversations. Bring all the charges you want for whatever you think you want. Just give me a pen. We'll take care of it. If you don't got a pen, I don't care. They're going away anyway. I don't need a pen. I don't need a paperwork. I don't need a UCC. I don't need anything. All I need is God in my mouth. And that's all you're going to need. Now, I don't disagree with Jack. It'd be nice to have some UCC1 because it has its place to be used at times. Because when you give a presentation to a judge in the private on some stuff hooked with it, it has some very powerful tools. But nonetheless, y'all worry about, well, I didn't have any witnesses, and I got clients that roll their window down an inch and talk. They're just, roll your window down. I don't care if you're alone. You don't need a tape recorder. I can make anything stick. I can say the cop did all sorts of stuff he didn't say. What's he going to say when he gets that letter? That's lies. I did not. I know what the law says about denying something. He just admitted it all. You think he has any comprehension what a conditional acceptance is? If he knew, he wouldn't have wrote me a ticket to begin with, because I would have defeated him or something, right? So if it got to that level, it's just so self-balancing. Be happy. We're going into the best of the best times on the planet. And you're going to be free in America. Now, one young lady this morning said, well, I don't want to spend a half a day in customs. I don't disagree that it's an inconvenience a little bit here and there. And, well, you got a business meeting to go to, you got this to go to. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you're here paying to play 3 days of your valuable time. You're spending money to be here, time to be here. Education is a little expensive, but we know what God says in Proverbs 3:13. Happy is the man that findeth wisdom, and the man that getteth understanding. For the merchandise of it is better than the merchandise of silver, and the gain thereof than fine gold. She is more precious than rubies, and all the things thou canst desire are not to be compared unto her. And it goes on a couple more, which I won't bore you with, but go to that and pick up a couple more verses, and it's like, ends with, happy is the man that retaineth her. I said, well, I know what retaineth means, until I looked it up. It says to practice or continually use. How are you going to do it if you're not doing it with your friends, neighbors, and everybody? Children, me, Jack, one of you said, yes, how you doing? Why do you want to know? That's good. I like that. Just 'cause. That's why. Just 'cause. So be happy. This is going to be the best times of your lives. And learn to love this government, because as Brandon and Jack have told you, they will reflect what you do. And one last story, and then I'm going to turn it over to Brandon. My buddy said, I know, God, they're just so good.
What was the definition of vociferous?
One last one. My buddy Sid, he was at the LA conference. And he's a big burly guy and runs a car company out of Hollywood Hills and Marina Del Rey and high-end cars. And he's been on probation for about 4 years. And he says, Gordon, I filed this stuff to get off. He said, why don't you look at it? I looked at it and said, well, I wouldn't exactly do it that way. I understand what you're doing, and you might be successful with it. And I don't disagree with that. It's just a standard kind of a filing they do. And I said, I might do it a little different, but I wouldn't worry about it. He files it. A couple months later, he gets a call from probation department. And he's a pretty gruff guy, but and he continues with that persona of gruff and self-righteousness and arrogance. And Sid won't mind me saying this about him. He knows it's all true. He's a little bit gruff with the probation guy. What do you want? Well, this and this. And he says, well, blah, 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 blah. He's happy to explain and be a little bit, snippety. And he tells me, he called me up and he said, hey, I want to tell you what happened. Now, Sid, I've done 3 or 4 deals for, saving his company and this and that with just some paperwork. And he says, man, this is magical. I love it. I said, I'm warning you. You better listen to the Monday nights. You better get that attitude changed. I love you, Sid. You're my dear friend. But you're like stupid, man. You just keep being, and stupid doesn't mean like a negative comment. It just means, he's unenlightened. I says, you got to stop it. You're going to kill yourself. So he talks to this gal, does that. He calls me up and he says, hey, you were right. I said, what? He says, remember you told me? He says, man, they turned me down. And they said, and they went back to elementary school things I did, this and that. I said, that was just a thing. I said, here's what I want you to do. Because he's only got like a year to go. It's no big deal, and he's doing fine with it. He said, I'm not going to worry about it. I said, you better worry about it. You've shown yourself to be a debtor. And what do they do with debtors? I said, they tax them. I said, do you think they need an excuse to default you on supervised release? You go back to jail a week before because they decide they don't like something about you. You don't get it, do you? They tax debtors. They're coming. So cut it out. I said, here's what I want you to do. I want you to call that girl, and I want you to ask her forgiveness. And I want you to say something like this, that I want to thank you for causing my denial at the court. I don't intend to refile, and I'm serious. I really appreciate it. I realize that I'm in error. I realize that my attitude with you merits nothing but a beating in reality. I deserved everything I got. And I appreciate what you've done for me because I'm having a chance to rethink my position and how I treat people, and I don't like the way I treated you. So I'm not asking you to recant what you did. I'm not looking to go back in and refile. None of that. I just want to tell you I appreciate you as a public servant who did their job and is helping to wake me up, and thank you. And if there's anything I can do for you, please let me know, and something like that. And he said, man, that's a hard pill to swallow. I says, you know what? I got this bad feeling that you're going to find yourself in some kind of a problem with probation if you don't do that. And I do have this weird feeling about it. And I said, please. He said, he'll think about it. And I'll call him when I get back and see if he did it. And in all likelihood, I'll report it on my next Monday. It'll be Tuesday this come. He probably won't have done it because I know Sid. I seriously doubt he did it and ate crow, we call it, or that kind of thing. So the long and the short is, life's so good. It's all yours, Brandon. Let's get going.
One little interjection here first. We'll get to Brandon really. He quoted Proverbs, and he quoted, do you understand, because some of us were talking scripture here this morning, and the question comes up, where do you go to learn about all these commercial truths in scripture? Well, it's not written down out there. You got to just kind of get them. But if you understand, supposedly the Old Testament has no gospel in it. It's all law, and the New Testament has no law, and it's all gospel. That's not true if you're looking at it. But in the book of Proverbs, you're introduced to 3 words. wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. Triune God. Three-part process. Wisdom, legislative. Knowledge, executive. Understanding, judicial. You have the Holy Spirit, the Son, and the Father right there. There's your gospel. And what they're really leading you back to is that true wisdom, knowledge, and understanding is understanding the creation, the Creator, and all that comes together in this relationship to get a commercial honor.
Well, thank you. I now have 4 minutes.
Oops, sorry, time's up.
Take it all, Brandon. Take it all.
I'll take it all. In reality, there's not much to add to that, especially before the break, but I would like to reiterate that sovereignty, standing as king, works for you when you see it in others. Meaning, don't stand in a place of righteousness and entitlement because you're a sovereign. You will only be treated as a sovereign when you treat all those around you as sovereigns. When you recognize that, yeah, you're a king and you're a queen, but so is everyone else around you. And be mindful of your beliefs and the whole being right about something. He just told you a story about his friend Sid. And he gave Sid a task that it requires Sid coming from a humble place. What does Sid say? That's a tough pill to swallow. Why is that? Sid likes to be right. Sid is attached. So we can continue to be right about things. We can continue to make others wrong about things. We can come from righteousness and entitlement. And I'm not here to tell you that this is where I come from all the time either. I wish. But I have to keep myself in check too. It always comes up. Righteousness, entitlement, ego. I have a friend. She's a really good friend of mine. Her name's Betty. And I'm having a conversation with her one day. And I'm part of a program right now where I'm training so that I can better train others. And we have these calls, these conference calls and stuff. And you know, I'm all about contracting. And the first thing they say about these conference calls is, they're non-negotiable. I'm like, really? Non-negotiable. I don't like that sound of that. You're telling me I can't contract. I can't renegotiate. It's non-negotiable. And you know, and I'm going on talking to Betty. Betty's actually one of the trainers who's training us. And we're really good friends. And you know, and I'm going on. And she goes, Brandon, so stop being so important. She says, when you realize that everyone in that group is just as important as you, they're just as busy as you, they're up to just as much as you. And she's right. Every person in this room is just as important as anybody else, just as significant. And I was making up. I had a story that I'm just too busy. I got too much going on. You know, I'm doing great things. What is that saying? The rest of the group isn't. Right? That's not coming from a place of humbleness. That's not treating all my brothers and sisters like kings as well. I'm not seeing the greatness in them. If I don't see the greatness in every single person around me, I'm really not living my own greatness. And so when we make up about a judge or a police officer or someone else around us that they're not whole, perfect, and complete and just the greatest gift to this earth, then we're failing to see that in ourselves. And like I said, it is a practice. It's not something that, oh, I get it, and now that's how it's going to be. No. But catch yourself. Interrupt the you that you've always been. Be an interruption to yourself. You know, when you're having conversations with others, you know, there's always a tendency, you know, I mean, I do it. I still do it. Me and Gordon get on the phone and we talk like, you know, the sewing circle, talking about the people that we're working with and how crazy and silly and, you know, that's what people do. Now, usually by the end of the conversation we go, yeah, but they're perfect.
It's not in a denigrating, it's just like Jack tells you, we just learn so much from our students, it's off the charts. We learn as much from our students and teaching you all as we get on our own. Without you all, we're nothing. And we do know that. And we're grateful for all of you. We're grateful for all of our students. They're just so revelatory for us. We worry about them because a lot of them just give up the ghost when they shouldn't have to. But man, we are grateful for them. Without them, our knowledge level wouldn't be near what it is. Thank Almighty God for all of you.
Absolutely. And so be that interruption. Be that interruption especially in the things that you fear. That will always be the challenge, because we will always have fears that come up. You know, like so many of our students, that's how they lose their remedy. Is somebody says something to them and a fear kicks in. They lose faith. They start to make up that they don't have it within them to bring resolution and remedy. And I'm here to tell you, each of you has it within you already. There is no material to go learn. It's all in where you're coming from. I absolutely believe that a person who knows nothing about law, who knows nothing about contract, but unconditionally loves, does not fear, and recognizes God in every single person that they come across. That what a beautiful reflection of the Creator. Because when you recognize it in others, you're recognizing it in yourself. You are whole, perfect, and complete. And everyone around you is whole, perfect, and complete. And there's nothing to fear. And everything that you experience is perfect. So be an interruption. Be an interruption for yourself. Be an interruption for those in your life. Not necessarily, I'm not telling you to go try to change people, because if I were telling you that, I would be saying that they're not whole, perfect, and complete already. You don't need to change anybody. But be an interruption. When they start to fear, bring them something. Give them something to ease their fears. Don't feed the fears. Because that sense of enlightenment, that raising of consciousness, that opening of our hearts and our minds, that's the remedy. I believe that I excel in commerce and contract because that's my come from. And I'm always practicing to be coming from that place. Again, I'm not perfect. I'll be the first one to tell you that I do make mistakes. And those mistakes, I recognize, I learn from, I grow from. I don't hold on to it. I won't make myself wrong about it, but I acknowledge it. Okay, I don't want to do that anymore. Like, I've got a girlfriend, and I want nothing more than to give her everything she wants and to be there for her, to love her, and to treat her the way she deserves to be treated. Sometimes I just react, Somebody says something, and it gets to you, hits your heartstrings, and you're not thinking, you're not at your best at that moment, and you just react. You may just snap at them. Okay. Acknowledge it, recognize it. You don't have to make yourself wrong about it. Don't beat yourself up about it. Don't judge others about it. Don't judge yourself. It's not right. It's not wrong. It's not good. And it's not bad. It's a neutral event. So keep in mind, they're all neutral events. And we don't have to make anything up about it. We can just be in observation of it and grow from it and transform ourselves in our hearts, in our minds, and where we're coming from and where we're going to. And that's where the remedy lies. Now, when we get back from lunch, what we'll do is we're going to go into some actually questions and answers, and I want to also go into specifically tying in some of the procedures we discussed yesterday for settling accounts and things like that, and actually tie it into court cases, because we've got a couple people out there who've been coming up to me and asking me about their situations, and it's not necessarily easy for people to see the connection of settling the account the way we were discussing with property and relating that and the information we shared about the private and public side of court and putting those together to form solutions. But I will tell you that in all the seminars we've done, all the classes we've done, as far as being competent in commerce, the kernels are there. Everything to create a remedy is there. Realize that the remedy will come from within you, and that there is no right way to do the paperwork. There is no right words that you need to speak. Where are you coming from? Are you coming from a place of righteousness and you're wrong and you're the bad guy and I'm the good guy? Because I don't care how great your paperwork is. That's not going to get you a remedy.